Well, more evidence today that Australia's standing in Washington is now somewhere between irrelevant and invisible. President Donald Trump hasn't yet bothered to nominate an ambassador to our country. It's not like he hasn't been busy nominating ambassadors. More than 50 countries, including diplomatic hotspots like Latvia, Namibia, the Bahamas, they've all been allocated ambassadors. Even New Zealand got an ambassador from the Trump administration. But so far, Donald Trump hasn't bothered nominating anyone to represent him in Australia. Nothing, not a name, not a whisper, not even a rumour of a shortlist. I have to say it's almost impressive how thoroughly we're being ignored. Joining me now is Strategic Analysis Australia Director Michael Shoebridge. Michael, great to have you on the program. You've said, and I quote, this shows a disturbing pattern of a lack of engagement between our Labor government and the Trump administration. What's going on and how much should we read into the fact he hasn't nominated an ambassador after 7 months?
Well, James, it fits a pattern, no leader-to-leader meetings, none planned, and no US ambassador. The relationship between Canberra and Washington is fraying, and that is bad news. It reminds me of that book title about why people didn't get a second date, which was, he's just not that into you. So it's become clear that Australia is a low priority in Washington, DC. And the problem is we want real things from America, particularly in the security realm. And without a US ambassador here and without leader-to-leader meetings and with this fraying relationship, Australia will get lowest common denominator outcomes on economics and security, when instead we should be seen as a valued ally and a country that is almost lonely in buying more from America than they sell us, than we sell them. So we should be a valued high priority and we're a low priority.
You made me smile when you used that dating analogy. I imagine Donald Trump saying to Anthony Albanese, it's not me, it's you. On the show last night, I spoke with Sky News investigation reporter Jonathan Lee, who was given amazing access to one of the United States' most advanced nuclear submarines, an Ohio-class sub, which is visiting Brisbane. It's thought one of these was involved in the campaign against Iran's nuclear sites. But Jono spoke with some of the top US Navy brass about the Virginia-class subs that Australia is supposed to be getting as part of the AUKUS Pact. And what he found out was, frankly, very worrying. I want to get your thoughts on it, but first, here's what Jonathan had to say.
I don't think AUKUS was originally intended for us to get American Virginia classes, and I think that has somehow become part of the mix. America right now is trying to work out how to give us the submarines that they have agreed to between 3 and 5, starting from 2032. At the moment, they are starting to go backwards with their own submarine numbers when they need to increase. They want to get to 65 attack submarines. They currently have 49. That's fewer than they want and they need. And they have to find a way to give us 3 or 5. So they're in a valley, which was caused by the Cold War. At the time, they're trying to ramp up production. They're at a rate of 1.3 now. They need to be at 2.3 a year. They don't have enough workers. They don't have enough welders, electricians. They're struggling.
So, Michael, what's your take on this? Are we going to get these subs? And if we don't, what does that mean for our security in our region?
Well, James, Jonathan is right that America isn't making enough submarines for its own needs, for its own Navy, and it's been spending billions of dollars over recent years trying to change that, but it hasn't moved the production rate up at all. In fact, it's gone backwards just last year. So it's getting harder for the US Navy to give up subs when it doesn't have enough themselves. And this is where the fraying relationship between the Albanese government and the Trump administration really starts to bite. Because if it's getting hard for the US Navy to give up its submarines, then they need a rock-solid, trusted, valued alliance partner in Australia if they're going to make that call. And when both things are getting harder, we're getting less trusted because we're less well known in Washington, and the Americans aren't getting enough submarines themselves.
I want to get to another worrying story that came out today. Sorry, were you about to add something? Go ahead.
Well, the consequence is the alliance is weaker, and it's meant to be a key part of regional security. So Australian security gets damaged, as does the regions.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's a story in the papers today saying some Iranians in this country claim they're being stalked and threatened by the Islamic Republic and by their agents. One, a dissident journalist who managed to flee here in 2013, told the Australian, agents of the Islamic Republic are threatening to kill me and they're putting pressure on my family in Iran, saying if I don't stay silent, they'll harm them. Michael, the man's lawyer has written to Victoria Police saying his life is in danger and he needs protection.
These are absolutely credible things. We know the ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, actually named Iran as a government that was doing this kind of thing in Australia. So threatening people in Australia with violence and intimidation, blackmailing them about their personal security and their families, these are all crimes under the Australian Crimes Act. They should be prosecuted. If they're diplomats doing it, they should be expelled. Why isn't the government doing this? Well, because Iran is a small player when it comes to this kind of thing. China's government is a bigger player. It's doing this on a wholesale level when the Iranians are doing it just on the retail level. So if the Albanese government did the right thing and got police to prosecute these Iranians that are committing crimes in our country, pressuring other people, they would be in a hard place to explain why they aren't doing that to the Chinese operatives.
Yeah, the other thing I'd love them to explain is why we have an Iranian embassy in this country. You mentioned Mike Burgess. He has said outright Iran is a hostile nation, and yet we've got an embassy here with their ambassador who continues to sprout rubbish, and the government take no action at all. Before you go, I want to ask you about Gaza, and in particularly this story from the UK Telegraph, where they quote a Hamas official or a former Hamas government official now based in Turkey, but saying that the promise by Keir Starmer to recognise Palestine is a victory. Bassam Naam, who is a former minister in the terror group's government, told the paper, international support for Palestinian self-determination shows we are moving in the right direction. Victory and liberation are closer than we expected. Michael, this is exactly what many of us have been warning about. Recognition of a Palestinian state will be viewed as rewarding terrorism and will only encourage more of it.
Well, James, anything that makes a Hamas official happy is probably a bad thing. That's a good rule of thumb. They are a terrorist organisation. But, this idea of if we recognise a Palestinian state in the middle of an armed conflict between Hamas and Israel, all good things will happen, is just an illusion. A bunch of bystander governments doing this gesture will affect nothing on the ground besides cheering up Hamas. So the reason any recognition should come after a negotiated peace is all of the practical issues about borders and security and the economics all have to be sorted out, and the tricky question of the West Bank. So without that, this unfortunately is a meaningless gesture except to Hamas.
Indeed. Michael Shoebridge, thanks for joining me tonight